Hello, and welcome to the podcast that must not be named. I'm Luke.
I'm Melissa.
And we are here doing Chapter 6 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Gilderoy Lockhart. This chapter is 18 pages, and that is 5.28% of this book. Melissa, take it away.
The first day of classes starts out rough with an angry howler from Mrs. Weasley. The howler shook the tables as Mrs. Weasley ranted at Ron and a little at Harry, and the boys discovered Mr. Weasley is also in trouble at work, enchanted car and all. Hermione, who felt the boys deserved whatever consequence they got, finally began speaking to them again as they headed out to the greenhouses for herbology with the Hufflepuffs. As they head to Greenhouse 3, where the more dangerous plants are, Harry is accosted by Lockhart. Lockhart proceeds to give Harry advice on how to seek fame and suggests that flying cars are not the correct way. Harry finally makes it, late, into class, and they begin repotting mandrakes. Mandrakes are plants that cry, apparently, and you have to block all the sound to your ears, using earmuffs, to work with them. Mandrakes look like ugly screaming babies, but have great magical properties for restoring people who have been transfigured. During class, Harry, Ron, and Hermione work with a Hufflepuff named Justin Finch Fletchley. Justin seems in awe of Lockhart and explains that his mom has finally bought into the idea of having a wizard's son after she read some of Lockhart's books. Justin is a Muggle-born. After the difficult task of mandrake repotting, the Gryffindors head to Transfiguration, where Harry thinks he must have forgotten everything from last year. Ron, however, was having an even worse time because his broken wand was creating smoke and rotten egg smells. Lunch didn't improve, where Ron discovered Hermione had heartlined all of Lockhart's classes on her schedule. Hermione told Ron that his broken wand was all his own fault, Colin Creevey wanted a picture with Harry, and Draco accused him of handing out signed photos like Lockhart. The worst part is, Lockhart overhears this, and he thinks he can fix the whole thing by taking a picture with Harry again. He warns Harry that it might be a little too soon in Harry's fame voyage to hand out signed photos. And then it was time for Lockhart's class, where Ron starts teasing that Colin and Ginny would soon be starting the Harry Potter fan club. Then there was a 54-question pop quiz, all about Gilderoy Lockhart, to see who had already read his books. And to end the class, Lockhart released a cage full of Cornish pixies. The pixies wreaked havoc on the class, including spraying the class with ink, throwing Lockhart's wand out the window, and hanging Neville from the chandelier. As the bell rang, most of the class disappeared, along with Lockhart, leaving only Harry, Ron, and Hermione to round up the remaining pixies. Hermione uses a freezing charm and makes the excuse that Lockhart just wanted to give them all some hands-on experience. Ron and Harry have other ideas. They think Lockhart's lying about what he can do.
So in this chapter, we have a few new characters. One being Professor Sprout. She was mentioned in Book 1, Chapter 7, but this is the first time we've met her. We also meet Justin Finch Fletchley and Colin Creevey. There's also a mention of Colin Creevey's dad, the Milkman.
The other new character for today is Luke's smarmy voice,
Hello.
brought to you in celebration of Gilderoy
Lockhart.
Oh, it's so bad, Luke. You got to knock it off. So we had a couple of locations. The greenhouses where we've mentioned before but have never traveled, and particularly Greenhouse 3, because we got to go to Greenhouse 1 last year.
That's where the dangerous plants are.
That's right.
Greenhouse 3.
What's kept in 2? Is there a Greenhouse 2?
Children that failed year 1.
Aww. And then the school Eton is mentioned, the Muggle school Eton.
Yep. Some magicabulary this chapter were the Howler, Mandrakes or Mandragora, the Venomous Tentacula. I can't even keep a straight face.
Oh man, he's killing me. I can't look at him. It's so bad.
Dragon Dung Compost.
You gotta stop.
Spello Tape, Witch Weekly.
And the most charming smile award.
Oh, yes. My favorite, Harry Potter Fan Club. The Band and Banshee. Order of Merlin 3rd class. We've heard about 1st class before. The and an honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League.
Gosh, I wonder who got all of these really fantastic awards.
These nearly fantastic awards. An honorary member, a Order third class. We also hear of a new spell, a freezing charm, the Pesky Pixky Pestronomy charm, which is for the Cornish pixies. Doesn't go so well. And Ogden's Old Fire Whiskey.
So our illustration this time, we have what is, I assume, a mandrake being pulled out of a pot. And my only
toddler or baby mandrake.
Yes, here's my initial impression is, what's with the screaming naked baby? It's kind of all I can think, with ferns growing out of its head.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of, we learned that they have to mature,
yes.
And these are young, so it clearly they seem to be following a normal human kind of maturation process.
Although probably not in the same time frame.
Correct.
They do it quicker.
Yeah, but they're definitely nailing that down with the chapter illustration.
Whew. So my first note, I am moving away from smarminess. I'm going to cut you off every time Smarmy comes back, which is going to happen a lot because Gilderoy Lockhart is quite the spectacular, special-tastic. Isn't he wonderful? He's just great. But I want to start with the howler that Mrs. Weasley sent. I want this. I want the ability to send these because I think that sounds like an amazing parenting tool. When I first read this book, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad my mom does not have access to howlers. As a mom, like, man, I wish I had access to howlers.
I want that tool.
I need that. That would be awesome. Talk about perspective change over the course of reading this for 20 years.
Yeah, do you really think this is the first time that one was used while Harry's been at Hogwarts?
I think it's the first one they noticed.
You think it's something that could be missed? Like, maybe if someone wasn't as afraid of it as Ron was. Like, it seems like the longer you wait, the worse it gets. So maybe he waited, like, long enough that it was loud screaming for the whole
My thought is, I assume breakfast is like an hour long, but you don't stay for the whole time. You just come and go.
Come as you please.
Somebody could have gotten a howler prior to Ron and Harry's arrival or after they left one day. They just literally haven't seen it.
Sure. Okay.
Speaking of the howler, I don't suppose you stopped to think about what your father and I went through when we saw that it was gone. It being the car. Here's my comment about this. So they didn't know there was a problem until they noticed the car was gone? I mean, I get the family was running late on the train, but didn't they realize that Ron and Harry hadn't made it through the barrier? Like, they completely missed saying goodbye to a child, and it wasn't until they returned to the car they realized he didn't make it on?
Yeah, like, I get you have a lot of kids with you. Like, I get it.
And the time crunch, I get it.
But, like, at the train station of book 1, she, like, clearly says for all of them to come back and say goodbye all as a group at one time. Like, and I get there's a time crunch, but are they really going to leave these kids?
Notice your kid didn't show up. That's all.
Yeah. Where's the check-in for the train? Like,
no idea.
Like, that seems like a pretty easy thing that if you're going to a school where they're going to be responsible for these children for an entire year, like, for 10 straight months, they're not going to have some kind of check-in
or to sign out your child, like, yes, I have them, they're accounted for.
Right. Like, oh, I am the guardian, I am signing them over to you, releasing them to you for the year.
I have to do that if my kids go to a day camp for 3 hours.
Right. Like, it just seems like
it's
come
a
on,
ridiculous.
Hogwarts. Come on.
Yep.
You need a liaison for the first time for the Muggle board students, and you need some kind of check-in process for this train.
So what we're really saying is you need some better systems.
Yeah.
All
the
right.
train clearly does leave them.
Oh, clearly leaves them. So then with the repotting of the mandrakes, they put on earmuffs to protect from sound. No earmuff I've ever had blocks that much sound.
Those new noise-canceling earmuffs, they're pretty fancy.
I've always had a problem with that one. Like,
yeah, I think they're clearly magicked earmuffs.
I know.
I don't think they're normal, but
okay.
I think it's pretty interesting.
So I just have a note that says, insert Lockhart bashing here. I don't really have anything specific other than that guy drives me crazy.
But he's the best.
No, he drives me crazy. And it is apparent that he's driving several other people crazy too.
Like Professor Sprout?
Yes. I like that there's some dissension among the ranks of the staff.
Right. Yeah, and we don't really know a whole lot about Professor Sprout.
No. So Professor Sprout, we don't know much about her, but I already like her being annoyed at Lockhart. I'm really glad that after herbology, these kids realized they had to go wash the gross herbology stuff off of themselves. I'm a little surprised at that hygiene.
Yeah, it's very. I think it's kind of a function of the fact that they live there. So we don't really hear about what the bathroom, shower, situation is like in the dormitories. But like if the way we went to school, we went to school and then we went home every day.
Right.
It
so
wasn't
you'd wash
a
at home.
dorm, or a boarding school type situation.
Right.
So we didn't really have the option of taking showers or cleaning up after, say, recess where you got real dirty. But you could go wash your hands and things, I guess. But
right.
So
that's
maybe,
kind of what I assumed they were doing. I'm just surprised they even did that.
Right. Well, they end up going to Transfiguration, right?
Right. With McGonagall. Right.
I think that is a big reason why it happened.
So if they were going to Charms with Flitwick, not quite as big of a problem.
Right.
Got it.
Snape and McGonagall, you're going to be presentable, especially for Snape, because you can't be dropping soil, into your potion. Like,
True.
You actually need to be.
True.
Technically, so.
Okay. Is there a shortage of beetles that makes McGonagall unwilling to give Ron a second one?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously kind of squashes the first one, and I think she's more setting a point than anything. But
his wand's a wreck, man.
Yeah, like how is it's pretty clear that there's a problem with it.
Yes.
And McGonagall, I'm gonna put this on McGonagall because I don't think the Weasley parents know about this, because clearly Ron's afraid of telling Mrs. Weasley anything further, anything else that came about them crashing the car. Hey, I also broke my wand and kind of need a new one. He's not gonna tell his mom that.
No, but he should tell his mom that.
He should. He's not going to.
Fine.
Because he's already been in trouble for it and doesn't want to make that worse and you broke your wand? Are you kidding me? Like, he's avoiding that. Okay. But with that, I think it's clear that the wand's not working properly, and I think it comes down to the teacher's responsibility to send that note home saying, this is a malfunctioning wand. We have to do something about this.
Okay.
Because he can't learn in my class.
Okay, I'll give you that.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, all right. And those are kind of all of my thoughts. What are your ponderings on chapter 6?
It's interesting that we have our Neville exposition as a round-faced, accident-prone, and terrible memory boy. Like, pick a new punching bag. Like, every time you talk about him, there was multiple times in book 1 where you would say him, oh, the round-faced boy, oh, the forgetful boy. Like, I get
Can't
that.
Just be, hey, their friend Neville.
Right. Clearly he stood
My
up
pal
to them
Neville.
and won the House Cup 10 points for standing up to his friends. Like, why can't it just be, oh, and there's their friend Neville, who tends to be forgetful. Like, that'd be fine. But, like, it's just, like, completely labeling him as these things.
Or just say, that's our friend Neville, and then have him do something where he forgets.
Sure.
Show
us the actions. Don't prime us for that as much. Okay. It just seems a little much.
I agree. Poor Neville. Like, for real, poor Neville. Like, stop hoisting this upon him.
Poor Neville. Poor Errol, the old owl. I mean, pretty rough. Just not in good shape.
No, he's old and decrepit.
Yeah, and I just feel bad for him because, like, there are so many Weasley kids. They probably can't take as good of care of the family owl as they probably should.
True.
And so it's just kind of limited resources, and he gets one of the short ends of that stick, which, I mean, all of them do. He gets hand-me-down, owl clothes and all that. So that's,
Right. Poor owl clothes.
What are the limitations or regulations surrounding howlers? Like,
none.
You think it's just like you write it on your own stationery and send it and you charm it, do that kind of thing?
Or is it something you have to pay extra for at, like, the owl post?
More owl post something.
It's like sending a box. You actually have to go to the UPS store.
Right.
Maybe that.
Right. So if that is the case, my point being, like, why wouldn't, like, what if you were getting hate mail for something? Like, you were, say, an author or a musician or something, and someone really disliked what you did. Like, if they were free to do, someone could completely monopolize your time by sending so many of these. They could almost become like a dangerous thing if there's no...
At that point, if I was that rich to be that kind of thing, I would have an assistant whose job it was to listen to those. Can you imagine the Ministry of Magic? Like, people are writing these to the government. That's a job. In my brain,
listen to them all.
Headcanon, that's a job. And it's the post office, like literally the office of the post.
The owl post office.
There you go. And it's, I open, I deliver, all howlers must be read, and then scribed into maybe like a notes
Mhm.
version on non-inflammatory paper.
Yeah. So is it the outpost office or is this the mailroom for the ministry?
It's like mailroom.
Yeah, more.
Yes,
that
but they
sort of
have
makes
to
sense.
listen to the
Yeah.
howlers.
Yep, because you got to figure out what the problem is.
Right.
Because they will do their due diligence to see what they can do.
There you go. Well, plus, like, the people that it's going to can't spend all day. Like, if I'm in a meeting and I've been sent a howler, I can't stop my meeting.
Right.
But the guy in the mailroom, he can just listen to it and tell me about it later.
Right.
Can you imagine having that job? The I'm going to get yelled at all day by howlers job?
Yeah.
You should have a sunny disposition in order to work in that spot.
That sounds like an intern job.
Very much.
Hey, go make coffee. Hey, go work in the mailroom
And
for a
to
day.
the family of intern.
You think maybe they use some of those earmuffs and wear them just a little off?
Maybe.
Just to muffle it a bit? I don't know. So this is the first, speaking of those earmuffs, this is the first herbology class we've actually seen. I know we've mentioned it, that it was a
But
class,
we didn't get to go
we didn't
last
get
year.
to go and see
Yeah.
Professor Sprout's teaching at all. Like, what'd you think about her as a teacher?
I liked it. I loved the hands-on activity. I liked that she showed them what to do,
Mhm.
but then let them just go. And then my assumption is she's just sort of walking around, like, giving pointers. And that's the class. And, like, they're not just doing some silly little activity. Like, that's
it's
a real...
not like a lab experiment.
like,
where
it's a
just
real
like,
thing. Like, we're actually needing
we're-
this done.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like the Hogwarts chores being done as learning
Yeah.
tools. Like,
Well, it should be.
Yeah, you set these things, you get these plants for the class, as part of the lecture, but they're like a real thing that you're gonna have to take care of moving
Right.
forward too. So might as well use all this free labor we got.
Nice.
It's a learning experience.
A learning experience.
Yeah, which also goes more into, does Hagrid do anything around here? He's got all these students that are being put to work. I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's a gameskeeper, isn't he? Keeper of keys and grounds and a groundskeeper.
And then he says
Yeah.
gamekeeper too.
Yeah,
He has 3 different jobs
true.
in book 1.
Which is still not a full-time job all combined.
Yeah, we'll
Moving
get
on.
off that. The Whomping Willow. Speaking of Professor Sprout, she seems like she knows what she's doing, doesn't she? I mean, like the Whomping Willow had its branches all in slings. I think that's a pretty neat visual, at least.
I do too. Like, and that's a good way to think about it. I'm surprised the Whomping Willow can repair its branches, much like a broken bone, but
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it
it's,
could. I don't know much about willows that whomp
Yeah, I don't know about womps that will, but
or won't.
or won't. To womp or not to womp? That is the question. But I don't know. It seems like she definitely knows what she's doing.
But, Lockhart seems to too.
Lockhart seems to know quite a bit about herbology. Denoming gardens, proper ways of doctoring Whomping Willows. My only question, what can't he do?
I plead the fifth. I choose not to answer this at this time because otherwise...
there's nothing on that list.
Oh, he is so obnoxious.
And he's also so charming.
Yes.
Especially with the other professors.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a very good mentor. Did we talk about this?
Mm-mm.
Harry's publicity bug that
Right.
Harry has caught, at least for Harry's sake, there is a mature and well-established wizarding celebrity to take pointers from and learn from
But,
and shadow.
You don't necessarily have to do as much as I do because you're not where I'm at.
Right. I was just as much of a nothing as you were when I was 12.
Yep.
Yeah, he just has so much to learn from Lockhart.
So special.
Hermione's crush on
Oh.
Lockhart, outlining all the lessons in Hearts on her schedule.
Man, talk about a blind spot. I can't even comment on any of these because he just drives me so much nuts. I think for once, Ron is the more realistic person because he like calls her out on it. He's like, "Why do you have this?" Or at the end of the chapter with the Cornish pixies, he's like, "Why? No, this is not practical application." Like, the fact that Ron is the one being realistic at the moment, that's...
The more mature one, maybe?
That's so funny and not at all normal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'll get off the smarm again.
Oh god, I can't take it anymore. Please don't bring him back.
He'll be. Colin, shows some real gusto
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even bravery to kind of go up to someone he's just learned about Harry, but Harry is clearly this very, very well-known wizarding entity.
Yes.
He's not well-known for being the person that he is, but he's well-known for the things that have happened to him and he's
Right.
done. So I don't know. It's not always easy to like go up and be like, hey, I'm a big fan. Can I get your picture? Like that takes some kind of courage to put yourself on the line to get rejected on something like that. You know, like, I don't know. It just shows some real personal bravery for Colin to be able to do that.
Man, if only he'd been sorted into the house about bravery. Oh, wait, he was.
I feel like it's fitting. And it's kind of, it's a real small scale version of it, but I think it definitely applies.
But I think it's good to show that there are different kinds of courage.
Exactly.
And it's a really good version, like, explanation of that.
Yeah, and Colin can be kind of a nuisance, but
yes,
I think he's a good character to have around.
I don't mind Colin.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much as I mind Lockhart. All right.
All right. Let's get to your 5 burning questions.
Question 1. What is an annoying trait that Lockhart does not have?
Oh, I don't think he's got bad habits like bad hygiene or biting his nails, so that's a trait, I guess.
Okay. All right.
I'll leave it at that.
There you go. What are the practical applications of turning a beetle into a button?
So I think if you're out on a date, you have your suit jacket, you look nice, and a button pops off. You lose it, it gets lost. What are you going to do? You're not going to show up on this date with, missing a button that looks haphazard and, not like you weren't prepared. So, if you happen to be walking past a flower bed, you see a beetle, pick that up, button, sew it in, and then when the date's over, you can release the beetle. He's served his help.
I was thinking more, if I can turn this into a button, I can turn other things into bigger things. But sure, date practicalities. With ya. Question 3. While I know the Weasley parents would be annoyed about the broken wand, what is the likelihood of them refusing to provide their child with an important school tool?
I definitely don't think they would refuse to do it, they would definitely buy him a new wand.
Right.
I think that's definitely going to happen. The only reason it has is because Ron's too afraid to admit more problems.
Right.
It's a very typical 12-year-old thing where
I agree.
You don't realize, the parent's angry, but
the parents being angry is not the end of the world, but they don't know that.
Right. It feels like it is because you don't like to disappoint them and make them upset because it's like, well, I just didn't know. Clearly this is not a good example of that because they clearly did something that was wrong, but they were actively just trying to do what they thought was right in a kind of perverse, weird,
noble kind of way.
Yeah, like they thought they were doing something that was logical and was the right thing. Like, we have to get to school. Yeah. How can we do that? Let's solve this problem. They didn't think past that stage, but
no, but it wasn't like they were out like, hey, look at how much fun it would be to jump off the top of the roof.
Right.
Just for fun.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. And I agree. I think they're totally going to do it for him.
He's just afraid to
bring it up. Yes. All right.
Which is a very, very realistic situation.
So, but kids, no matter how bad you think your parents are going to react, still got to tell them, because having a broken wand is way worse than having a disappointed parent.
Honesty is the only...
No, there's others. It's just the best one.
Not in my book.
And when your kid is 12, we'll see how that goes.
We'll see how that goes.
Why was Professor Sprout distinctly disgruntled and not her usual self?
Well, I think maybe Professor Lockhart had some good tips that she hadn't thought of.
Or maybe she was annoyed that her precious Whomping Willow had been hurt.
Very, very... Who wouldn't be upset?
Right.
Or worried, even?
Or it's very... however unlikely, it could be possible that some know-it-all teachers, and I use the word teacher loosely, were sticking their nose in where they didn't belong.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be lectured in your own subject of expertise.
True.
When you aren't asking.
Right.
It's one thing to go out and say, I'm going to learn this new thing, and this guy knows what he's talking about. Definitely sounds like Lockhart was pitching in where his just wasn't needed, and it's just a waste of time for Professor Sprout.
Very much. Very, very much. Why is it Neville hanging from the chandelier?
Because that is the role that he plays.
That's a horrible role.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate that it's always Neville.
Yeah, and there are other characters that I think it would make
throw
just as much...
Pavarti up there
throw
or something.
Neville, or not Neville, sorry.
No, not Neville.
Throw not Neville. Throw Seamus up there.
Right. Dean, give him some personality.
Right. Yeah, it just feels like it's a little... there are all these characters that we get introduced to as a acquaintances. We don't get to know any of them at this point,
Right.
really, aside from Neville, who's always that punching bag.
Always.
And I kind of put it more on JK than
Oh, me too.
anything, where like Hagrid, I mean, obviously she wrote all of it, but I was more upset about where he was as a character last book. This is more just things happening to Neville that
There's no reason that they're
There's no
happening
reason.
to Neville. There's no
Right.
there's no plot device. There's no driving force that means it has to be
right.
him.
It's
It could
just,
be anybody.
something embarrassing happens to a
I
student.
know.
I got a guy.
Yeah, I know who that is. All right. And Luke, what was your favorite line?
My favorite line is, "You'd better hope Creevy doesn't meet Ginny, or they'll be starting a Harry Potter fan club." I think that's hilarious.
I do too.
That's
I
really
laughed out
funny.
loud at that.
How about you? What was your favorite line?
But when I was 12, I was just as much of a nobody as you are now. In fact, I'd say I was even more of a nobody. I mean, a few people have heard of you, haven't they? All that business with you who must not be named. He glanced at the lightning scar on Harry's forehead. I know. It's not quite as good as winning Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award 5 times in a row, as I have, but it's a start, Harry. It's a start.
It's a start.
Man, that guy.
And he's the greatest.
Smarmiest.
Smarmiest for sure. All right, in this chapter, who was your chapter MVP?
I'm going to go with our new friend, Justin Finch Fletchley.
Yeah, we really talked about him. So, what'd you really like about him?
I really feel like, especially last year, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are definitely a trio, and it's very hard to sort of be the. I know his voice says, "Oh, the third wheel," but
The
for them, it's
fourth
really
wheel.
being the fourth wheel. Neville has tried; it doesn't really work. Seamus and Dean sort of have themselves, but I really like that Justin just comes in and starts talking, and it's like very friendly and like naturally like talking to them. And knows each of them, not just Harry, but like has a story for each. So I thought that was a really interesting new character and a new way to introduce him not to one of them, but to the trio. And it
Right.
still seemed like a natural way to fit in.
Yeah, he definitely seems like a decent bloke, as
There
they
you go.
say, And what did you think about him kind of being impressed by Lockhart? Like, I think that's probably a pretty typical view. So
Especially of somebody who isn't from the magical world. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, or think about it in
I think
general.
it's almost go
like
ahead.
there's a lot of people who are like, oh, that famous person, oh, they're so famous, and then you meet them and you're like, all right, you're just a dude.
I think it almost might be more obvious to him. I would think a Muggle-born student be able to, I don't want to get spoiler on this, but like be aware of his
Shortcoming a little more.
shortcomings easier because he doesn't have background knowledge other than,
See, I disagree with you because I would think a Muggleborn wouldn't know that what he did there is something a lot of people can do, or what he did here is something a lot of people can do. Whereas I think people with enough magical background can read that and be like, yeah, that's not realistic.
Yeah, but he's so popular. Like
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll table that.
Okay,
All
who's
right.
your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is Colin Creevy.
Ooh,
Kind of for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. He makes himself, known to Harry, who seems to be his hero, and is kind of just down to be himself and not hide his enthusiasm.
okay.
Like he's very, very much interested in knowing Harry Potter and learning about a lot of things, and he's very curious. And he's a little eccentric, which might
True.
rub people the wrong way, but I think he has good intentions, and he's not afraid who knows it.
All right, awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We welcome any of your comments on our website. You can go to thepodcastthat.com. You can go to this episode and leave us a comment. You can email us any questions you have at thepodcastthatmustnotbenamed@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at notnamedpodcast.
You can subscribe and rate us on iTunes or whatever podcast catcher you use.
Join us next week. We will be discussing Chapter 7.
Mudbloods and Murmurs. Stay imagining.
Thanks.
Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
Say Chamber
And
of Secrets.
Chamber Exorcist.
You say, welcome to the unrestricted section.
Hello. That's not preference.
Oh, what house are you in?
Daddy.
What's your name?
Big Griffin.
Let's go, Griffin.
Let's go, Gryffindor. Blah, blah.